cycle of ignorance and poverty. And that's what I call the hereditary poverty, because
Ignorance
mothers
and
and
poverty.
fathers would produce children who are also poor.
I never expected that this country would have reached a stage where we have illiterates, and functional illiterates too. Now, we had to run a course, a remedial course,
In your company?
yes, to get what you want. Now, this is absolutely essential. Now, it shows and it indicates in no uncertain terms the school system has let us down. And the reason for that is that the method of teaching. We ignore certain fundamentals. We've given up the basics, and we adopted a system that was not, let's say, necessary for Guyana. These are things we got to look at seriously. Because I could remember in my school days certain subjects you had to do. When you came out, you had more than the knowledge. You could actually do the things. You don't do those things anymore.
And the other thing is, in your day, I suppose, when you came out, you were both qualified enough and humble enough to accept employment. You were employable, and the level of employment was much higher. I think the official rate of employment in this country might be about 12%, but a lot more people are underemployed, and I'm not sure how they define unemployment nowadays. I think even if you come out of school as a dropout and you don't apply for work, you're not measured, you're not counted as unemployed. But if you apply for work and you don't get work, then you are unemployed. So the point is that even the official statistics of about 12 or 13% or whatever it is, probably understate the true unemployment situation in this country. I think that a Caribbean report, a CARICOM report earlier this year said that the youth unemployment is about 23% throughout the Caribbean.
Throughout the Caribbean. And what is it in Guyana? We don't know.
No, we don't know. Well, we say 13%, but the average for the entire Caribbean is 23%.
Well, ours may be higher. Ours may be higher. Now, David, there is one of the things that bothers me as far as Guyana is concerned. And I believe part of our problem stems from the Constitution of Guyana. The Burnham Constitution of 1980 was devised strictly for Mr. Burnham. I can remember 1978, the referendum, the opposition from all segments of the population and professions against that constitution. But it was pushed through and it became law. I would say this, Burnham never overused it, that I know, because I worked through that period. There were times when he was harsh, he did things that he should not have done. And of course, he had the powers to do it and did it. That's the constitution we still have with us today. That constitution gives whoever is the president overwhelming powers. He cannot be sued in office or out of office. He can do as he likes and no one can challenge him. But it's my humble opinion, no leader, irrespective of which part of the world he lives in, should have such powers. If you get elected, David, are you prepared to change that constitution to make it more, not pliable, I would say, more democratic, where if it's a president or prime minister, there's accountability. Every one of us is accountable for what we do. We may believe we'll live forever. We never live forever, sir. And even Mr. Burnham felt that he was going to live forever, so therefore that constitution. Even Dr. Jagan, when he came into power, we had asked him point blank during the 90s, during the campaign whether he will change the Constitution, because and he says yes, that belongs to the waste paper basket. Well, that was not to happen. So everyone likes this Constitution so much. Does it mean that if Mr. David Granger is elected president, he will also hold on to that Constitution and ensure we continue the same way, where no changes could be made, where the average citizen rights are just ignored? You know, human rights are abused totally in this nation of ours.
Well, you asked me a specific question, Yesu, and I'll give you a specific answer. Yes, if I'm elected, I will reconvene the Constitution Review Commission, and certainly I will try to use my influence and my power, because I'm the president, I will have a lot of power, I suppose, to change the Constitution. I believe it is an aberration. What I think happened, as a student of history, I don't like to use words like good and bad or right and wrong. I try to use and to look at the cause and the consequence. What I think happened around that time in Guyanese history is that there was a convergence of two security trends. One was the Venezuelan threat, which was perhaps exacerbated by the...
Between 68 and onwards, yeah.
Well, I think it got worse in the early 1980s, because it was clear that Venezuela was not going to renew the Protocol of Port of Spain. At the same time, because of the socialist policies that the Burnham administration had introduced, there was what was called a destabilization. Jamaica, Nicaragua, Grenada also suffered from this destabilization. So I think part of the Constitution was designed to deal with the threat of external destabilization. Internally, as well, as we heard Dr. Rupnarayan admit recently, there was a threat of internal, and the Working People's Alliance had sought to arm itself. I don't know to what extent these factors militated or motivated Mr. Burnham to have that type of constitution. But it looked to me, in retrospect, as a sort of emergency constitution, as almost a wartime constitution. I don't believe it is relevant anymore in the circumstances of Guyana today. We are not at war with Venezuela, and we don't have the same level of internal security threat as was posed by an armed opposition. I would certainly, in answering your question here, so I would certainly convene a Constitution Commission and try to revise it in the direction of the 1970 Constitution, when we had a president like Mr. Arthur Chung.
Yes.
And we had a prime minister who was head of government. Those are my thoughts, and that's my promise.
So you want to see a non-executive president like Arthur Chung?
That is correct.
And a prime minister
who's head of government.
Head of government, and be the head of parliament, and accountable to parliament for the results of the nation.
Yes, we will go forward back to the 1970 Constitution.
You know what, people may say we go backwards, but we're going forwards.
Yes.
That's forward move, indeed.
That's my promise.
Well, if you promise, well, then I think you'll have to let the country know this, because people are not conscious of this Constitution, what it stands for, and what has been committed in the name of the Constitution. Not committed, but just happened because of powers. And I was very involved in 90 onwards, and the reason for that involvement was for human rights, because our human rights was being trampled upon. Our rights as citizens were ignored. And it's all as a result, although I will say this, Mr. Hoyt, he did not misuse the Constitution, maybe now and again, to that degree, and hand it to him. I didn't see eye to eye with Mr. Hoyt. We had battles, the two of us. And of course I suffered for it. But that doesn't mean I will put the man down. I could recall when we had blackouts. That's one big plus for Mr. Hoyt. He refused to take a generator or order a generator. He had his hand lamps at home and stayed in the dark like all the persons in Georgetown or throughout the country. So he led in that respect by example. And that's what we need in leadership, because leadership is most important, that you show you live by example. And David, there's no doubt in my mind that if elected, you'll carry out your promises. So David, the final word is at you.
Well, yes, so in conclusion, I can say that the country is faced with challenges, particularly public security and national unity. I do believe I'm equipped to face those challenges. We need to pay a lot of attention to our young people, particularly their education and their employment. I do believe my familiarity with the University of Ghana system and the criticisms which have been leveled at the University of Ghana, even recently by the Minister of Education himself, could be rectified. The university needs to be refinanced, needs to be re-engineered, and we are capable at Turkine and at Tain of producing a higher quality graduate. Those graduates could be helped to reinvigorate the Teachers Training College, and we could, I hope, within 10 years, put people with degrees. I think every school teacher in this country should have a first degree. And the education system, we can become an education nation again. And the education system will have spin-offs in terms of the economy, in terms of employment, in terms of private enterprise. So these are things which I intend to do, and once I'm elected, I will do them. Particularly for you, I promise again that once I get elected, that constitution will not last for 5 years.
All right, sir, I take your word for it, and I must say that you made very clear your direction where you intend to go. And we must have a sense of direction if we want to get somewhere. Otherwise, we're lost. We're going to go over the precipice. And let's hope we could recoup that situation and start, in a sense of being a nation of persons who could work together, who could live together in harmony and peace and tranquility. This is what is needed in Guyana now more than ever before. If we don't get that, I'm afraid we'll be groping in the dark. We'll be getting poorer and poorer as a nation. Do we want that? The answer is no. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks again, Yesu.